Linda has already given her introduction to say that it's all about AI and how we as leaders can integrate it into what we do at Toastmasters. So, on tonight's panel, we've got three amazing panelists who I'm excited to introduce to you tonight. So, our first panelist has been a member of Toastmasters for 12 years, and he served as District 91 in multiple roles, including as District Director during the pandemic in year 2020-2021. He's a member of two clubs. He's a member of Kent Speakers and Experience French, and is currently our District 91 Chief Judge. Professionally, he's a consultant in the biotech industry and helps companies shape their scientific challenges into digital solutions. Outside of Toastmasters work and family commitments, he's a basketball referee and loves practicing table topics with angry players and coaches. Please join me in welcoming our first panelist for this evening, distinguished Toastmaster Arnaud Sartre. Welcome, Arnaud. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Lydia. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Our second panelist this evening is this year's District 91 Programme Quality Director. She has a strong background in media and is the host of a super successful podcast. And with that, she brings a wealth of experience in communication and storytelling. She's passionate about personal and professional growth and is dedicated to helping others elevate their skills and reach their full potential. She's a member of the Speakers of Croydon Club and Excalibur Speakers. And I'd love for you to also join me in welcoming distinguished Toastmaster Debbie Williams. Welcome, Debbie. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And our third and by no means least panelist has been a dedicated member of Toastmasters since 2014. She's held every single club officer role, and that gives her a deep understanding of leadership within Toastmasters. She's passionate about leveraging AI to enhance efficiency and aid creativity, integrating it into her Toastmasters journey as well as her personal life and professional work. And as a panelist this evening, she brings first-hand experience of using AI to support club leadership, to streamline tasks, and to elevate the member experience. Please join me in welcoming our third panelist for tonight, Wendy Gibson. Welcome, Wendy, and thank you to all of you tonight for being our panelists on this very interesting topic of AI, artificial intelligence. So my first question is, because we're all coming from different backgrounds and experiences, perhaps, I'd love for someone to just give us an introduction into what on earth is AI, artificial intelligence? And I'm actually going to pose that first question to Arnaud. Arnaud, could you just help us understand a bit more about AI?
Sure. And well, as you heard in my introduction, I love table topics, and I'm sure all of you this evening are neither players nor coaches of basketball, and therefore you are not angry. Now, artificial intelligence is, for lack of a better term, a tool that's been around not just for the last few years, as many people sometimes believe erroneously, but it's been around for many, 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 many years. But it's only recently that we've been able to use it in pretty much all walks of lives and make use of it, namely OpenAI and ChatGPT for probably the most famous one of them. And it's really a tool that we have at our disposal to make our life just a little bit easier. Now, I don't want to hear anybody saying that they've prepared all of their speeches with ChatGPT, because that is not the way. We are Toastmasters, we write our own speeches, but we can get inspiration from multiple tools. And just a little nugget for something that we might want to talk about later. We are having access as Toastmaster members to an AI tool that's part of the arsenal of tools that Toastmasters provide to us. So if you want to know more, keep listening.
Thank you so much, Arnaud, for that explanation, excellent explanation about AI, and also introducing us to a tool that we already have available to us in Toastmasters. And I don't know if many of our audience here have heard about Udly. Hopefully you have. Maybe you've heard about it, not used it, don't know what it is. And I know that some of us on our panel tonight do have experience of using Udly. And I think, Wendy, have you used Udly in the past? Do you want to share with us, like, how has that tool helped you in your communication and leadership within Toastmasters? Oh, you're on mute, Wendy.
I've specifically, we need an AI thing for that. Mind you, it actually tells you when you're on mute. Um, I've used Udemy for preparing speeches and particularly club contest speeches. It's a really helpful tool. There's two elements to it. One is to either record audio or you can actually get it to record video and give you feedback on the video as well. It will give you a synopsis on its assessment of your speech, which is really handy. So if you are using the video function, it will also give you an idea of how often you actually look into your camera, which is the equivalent of giving eye contact. If you, so on the audio side, it will then give you a really good transcript, I think, of your speech. It will highlight any ums and ohs that you say. What it will also do is it gives you the opportunity to reword some of your speech, your transcript, and it will also tell you if you use certain behaviors. So some people, for example, might say so before all of their sentences. I discovered by using Udemy that I start my sentences quite often with the word and. Doesn't mean to say that it's wrong. It's just something that you can use and be mindful of and be aware of your behaviors when you speak. The other thing I also found really good about the tool is the fact that it also looks at how much you waffle. That to me, I think, is the most important function. So it can actually tell you how, if you are able to reduce the length of your speech, and it'll even give you a percentage of how much you can potentially reduce your speech by. So the analysis that you can do on your speeches is actually really high within Udemy. What I would say is maybe the AI tool for rewording and having a look at some of your sentences within the transcript itself is maybe not the best. So I have in the past actually exported my transcript out of Udemy and reworked it in other AI tools as well, which I've maybe found a little bit better to use to try and rework my speech. What I would say though is none of these should be, they are there just to help you finesse your speech. They should not be there for you to write your speech from scratch because it doesn't provide original thought. All it's there is to do is to help you fine tune your speeches.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That's so helpful to hear how you've used it, and you've also kind of used it alongside other tools as well. So we've got Udemy, but how do we actually access it? Do we know how to get to it? Can anyone share where we find it um, within Toastmasters?
I think
Arnaud, I
Susie
know
just
you
put a
know.
link in the chat
Did someone
for
put a
it.
link already?
Yeah, and all you need to do is just log in using your Toastmasters login that you'd log into TMI. And it's actually not owned, if I recall, it's not owned by Toastmasters International, but they have an agreement with Udemy to offer you a free account.
Awesome. Thank you so much. A very useful tool. And if you haven't tapped into that, I think it would definitely be beneficial to do so in line with all the ways that Wendy has just shared with us. So thank you for that, Wendy. And I'd like to bring Debbie into the conversation now. And Debbie, I'd love for you to share with us um, what experience you've had with using any AI tools within the Toastmasters experience that you have found beneficial for you as a leader.
I think we speak about Udemy, and I think Udemy is a wonderful tool that everyone should try out at least once. I mean, for all those individuals who have bothered friends and family to please listen to my speech one more time. You've probably shared it with them 20 times or more, and they don't want to listen to you again. At least you've got something else that's independent of friends and family that you can use. But for me, I mean, I use things like Grammarly, for example, particularly when I'm sending out a lot of communication. It's good to be able to check your grammar in terms of what you send out. And I just think that, I think as Arnaud has said as well, AI has been with us for a while now, but it's just more popular now. And for some people, they may have only realized that they've been using it for some time. How many times do you get suggestions in terms of, oh, you bought this, so I think you'll be interested in this, and other sort of algorithms and other areas in our life where AI has played a part. How many people have applied a job and it's been filtered by an AI machine, for example? So there's lots of different areas in our lives where AI is used, whether we realize it or not. And sometimes we just have to think, well, okay, how can we use this to our advantage?
Absolutely. How can we use it to our advantage? And thank you so much for that, Debbie. What would you say is one of the main benefits then of using these tools for us as leaders?
I just think you can use it for things like idea generation, to overcoming writer's blocks, for example. Being able to, if you're not too sure how to adapt your speech or your communication to a slightly different audience, for example, so that it's as effective as possible. That's where it's really useful. I just think in terms of finessing that communication piece, but what it doesn't do, it doesn't think for you. For example, if you're sharing a story, it doesn't know your personal story. So if you rely on it to write your speeches, then you're going to lose your authenticity.
Yeah, definitely. And we don't want to do that as speakers and as leaders. Authenticity is something that is very important in what we do. And Arnaud, I'd just love for you to share with us your sort of personal experience using a tool like this, a tool like Udly. Do you have an example of how you've used it, maybe to create something that you've had to do as a leader?
For sure, I've used it a few times, and I'll give you two examples. The first example is something I did almost exactly a year ago, in fact, and it was following up from a 40-minute training at a TLI, I believe, that was recorded. And a lot of people thought, oh, that's actually quite nice to hear. Do you have any notes or anything of this nature? I mean, I had the slide decks and everything, but not something that was essentially a summary of the discussion. But actually, pushing that recording through Udly not only gave you some feedback on the content, all the ums and ahs that others have described before, well beyond this panel, but it's really given me a bit of a nice summary that was able to be shared. In fact, I used Udly and ChatGPT for two things. Udly to analyze the speech, and ChatGPT to get the transcript into a one-page document, which didn't need that much of a review. That was then published as part of a newsletter. I'll let you define and check out which newsletter I'm talking about. Some of you may know. Clue, it's not District 91. So that's the first example, turning a speech into a transcript, into a meeting note, into a newsletter article, instead of redoing the same thing over and over again. It's your material, push it through the tools that you have at your disposal, and suddenly you've gained hours. Example number one. Example number two, a couple of weeks ago, I was attending the Division C TLI, and one of the breakout session was all about challenging ourselves to record a 30 seconds promo video for our clubs. And I thought, oh, why not push that video through Udly? And I've done that literally just before this meeting to see what came out of it. I won't reveal all of the content. There were two things that jump into mind. Number one, Udly, at least, likes the friendly demeanor And at the same time, Udly thought I could use a better hook at the beginning of that 30 second. So all of this is very useful because especially in leadership positions, when we do video recording for a newsletter or otherwise, it's important that we come across in a way that is relatable, but in a way that is also powerful, and especially for the first few seconds, so we can grab the attention of the public that we're trying to reach. And those are the two examples I wanted to share with you, and two practical examples that can be used by anyone, club leaders, and anytime in business if you have access to those tools in your business.
Right. Very good. Thank you so much for sharing those. And time saving is one of the things that came out there as one of the big benefits of using these tools. And we've got a question from someone, I believe, about Udly, and I think we'll just go to that question now. But it says it's from Secretary at Solent Speakers. Does anyone have any concerns about the terms and conditions of Udly and how it might use your speech content? Has anyone got any sort of experience or knowledge on that side of things? Arnaud, you unmuted? Yeah, please go ahead.
I'll offer my perspective on it. If you're worried about Udly's terms and conditions, you should be worried about every terms and conditions of every service you access online.
Well said. Thank you. Yes, very, very true. Thank you so much. And thank you for that question there. And also thank you to whoever has posted how to get to Udly in the chat as well. That's much appreciated. So we've spoken a bit about the benefits and how we've used it and how it can save time. It can help us to finesse our speeches, our content, and the things that we do. But there's always two sides to these things, right? So I was wondering if anyone would like to share what they feel maybe are the maybe less positive or negative things about using AI, and also things that we need to consider as leaders and as speakers so that we are using these tools in the best way possible. So what would you say are the more negative things about using AI? And that's open to anyone to answer there. Wendy?
I remember to unmute this time.
Well done.
One of the things you really have to keep forefront of your mind when you're using AI tools is the fact that the output that it's going to give you is always ever going to be an aggregate of whatever content there is on the internet. It's never going to give you an original thought. It's never going to give you any new ideas. And that's basically how it works. It's effectively just data scraping absolutely everything off the internet and providing an aggregate or an average response to you. So if you're looking for something that's going to be very out there, it's not going to provide that. The other thing I've also found, just from using it within my own professional life, is the information you might be, I mean, it might not be specifically relevant to Toastmasters in itself, but there's a huge bias in the information towards US style stuff, so or US based data, which may not be what you're looking for. You might be looking for something that's really specific to your area, and it's just purely down to the fact that the quantity of content that comes out of the US is significantly more than anywhere else in the world. So you do have to actually look at the output that you get from whichever tool you're using and actually challenge that information. You still have to fact check it, because it could easily have found a piece of misinformation and be regurgitating that back. It doesn't mean to say just because it's given you a response that the response is actually accurate. So I would always look at the information, but also verify behind the scenes to make sure, and fact check just to make sure that it's correct.
Thank you so much. Absolutely very important, fact checking and not just relying on it as a sole source of our information. Does anyone else have any downsides that they've experienced or they want to share about using AI? Debbie?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be ethical concerns about AI. And also we need to And particularly within Toastmasters, we need to concentrate on the reasons. Why do people join Toastmasters? Do they join Toastmasters because they want to better themselves and become better speakers? How are they going to do that if they're solely relying on AI to be able to, if they're asked to speak at an event at short notice, they can't quickly go into ChatGPT or Udemy to say, quickly put me up a speech. You need to be able to communicate to a variety of different audiences. And so you want something that's aligned with the Toastmaster goals and what you want to achieve out of that journey and experience. And also, I mean, as Wendy has expressed it as well, you don't want to lose that personal touch either. And I think it's really important that there's a balance between using AI and your own experience as a leader or a Toastmaster, and just not having that over reliance on it. And that bias thing is a big thing as well, not just within what the information that it provides, but also if you're using images, if you're using video and you're asking it to produce something for you, you've got to think of the biases that it will produce as well.
Mm. Thank you so much for that, Debbie. Yes, getting that balance, very important. Arnaud.
Could I add a couple of important points there as well, just to add to Wendy and Debbie's perspective there. Wendy mentioned the fact that it essentially regurgitates somebody else's content. So we are in a contest season, so I'm going to put my chief judge hat on. There are rules around originality, so don't be fooled by AI. That will be my very simple message. The other thing, which is something I came across on social media just in the last few days, when using AI to produce images and so on, especially as it relates to Toastmasters or any copyrighted terms and logos and so on, don't. Or if you do, check the copyright is correct. Because I have seen, for instance, a number of images created which look very good on the surface, but they, for instance, disfigured the Toastmasters logo, which is technically a copyright infringement. And you can do that very clearly also with pretty much any other type of content. So very important to keep that in mind. It's good, but it's not perfect. And it's certainly not a replacement for good governance and good practice when it comes to running an organization just like ours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chief Judge, for that important insight there. I'm just going to have a look at the chat and see what is being said here. So Jewel, who is a VPE, has said she's used ChatGPT and Claude. She uses them very often, very helpful, helps to structure thoughts, feedback, pretty much any kind of feedback, but just need to know how to ask the right questions and prompting. It's super helpful, especially for Table Topic Master. The tools are there and it's just a matter of how to use it. And I think that's definitely what we're getting out of this conversation. They're tools to help us, but not to sort of replace the things that we want to do. So thank you for that comment, Jewel. And I just wanted to ask another question. I can see things are coming up in the chat, trying to keep an eye on things. We definitely will do that. But I'm just wondering if you've got any advice for any of our audience members here tonight who feel like they're not very sure or not confident about using AI tools, and perhaps it's just a new concept to them. What would you say would be their first step that they could use or do to get on this AI journey that everyone seems to be on at the moment? What would be your advice there? Let's see. I'm going to go to Wendy for that one.
The advice that I would give is to actually just play around with it. It's a really, well, depending on, obviously there are so many of them now. I haven't played around with all of them. And the one that I prefer happens to be ChatGPT. And, you know, whether it's you type in a question, whether you ask it a question via record and then it transcribes it into text for you, or you can actually even interact with it on the free version as though you're speaking to a person. It's actually quite frightening as to how realistic it can sound. Just play around and interact with it, ask it some questions, be curious, but don't necessarily fully trust exactly everything that it says. So maybe ask it a question of something that you know already. The important thing is that the more rich your question is, or the more background you give the AI, the fuller the answer will be that you receive. So just as an example, if you happen to be wanting a bit of a feedback on something that you've written, not if you just put in what you've written into that particular tool, all it will do is maybe look at a quicker, a more efficient way of what you're saying and change the grammar. However, beforehand, if you actually explain to it the scenario, so where that content is going to be posted, what the tone is that you want out of that content, and the objective that you want that content to have, and maybe the key message, you'll get a far richer response out of the tool that you're using when it comes to actually finessing whatever content it is that you're wanting to post.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Definitely that word finessing keeps coming up in this conversation, and being curious, using those prompts, really, really helpful. Now, I know we've got a question from someone who's got their hand up. I can't actually see the hand raised, but I see in the chat, is it Roz? Oh, Rizvana. Hi, Rizvana. Would you like to ask your question very quickly, and we'll get an answer to you?
Sure. Sorry. Okay, I'll be brief. To the panelists then. So AI is obviously an up and coming tool, and I'm seeing it as a way to improve speech, make it more succinct. But should there be a requirement by Toastmasters International or district that we should declare as Toastmasters if we're using AI tools in our speech? Because obviously some things, because it's all research based or programmed questions, what comes out, it's not our own material. It's borrowed information, like a quick reference. And that will affect people who know how to use AI and give them an unfair advantage compared to Toastmasters who don't know AI.
Okay, thank you, Rizvana, for that question. So I feel like you're asking if we need to declare whether we're using AI in our speeches and content. Am I right? That was the question?
Yeah, the question is, should we be declaring it?
Should we be declaring? Would anyone like to answer that question? Arnaud's pointing that way. Which way is that going? Is that going to Debbie? I think so.
I'm happy to answer that. And I want to come back to Arnaud's point on originality and the fact that, do you want a speech that's authentic? Storytelling is one of my big things. AI can't tell your story, and AI can't tell your story in the way that is true to the events of whatever story you're trying to share, for example. Yes, you can actually use AI to, for example, for me personally, I've always, I don't know, I probably swallowed a thesaurus when I was younger, but I love descriptive words, for example. And I still have a thesaurus, but sometimes occasionally I might go into ChatGPT and said, can you think of another word? Give me another word for X, Y, or Z, for example. And I may use those words. But I just think everything into context. Everything should be done in context. And I just think that it's a bit like what's happened with universities and schools at the moment in terms of they're cracking down on because they want original pieces of academia. And I just think let's just see how things develop, because AI is changing as we speak. What we have today is going to look very different this time next year, for example, and in years to come. And I think it's very hard to, whatever we regulate today, we're going to have to change it very soon, immediately afterwards.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for that answer. I feel that that was really helpful. And Rizvana, I hope that was helpful for you as well. Okay, thank you. I believe we have another question from Chris. So, Chris, would you like to ask your question?
To be honest, no, my hand was up a while ago, but you asked the question and then Wendy kind of answered it in the question that you asked her.
Okay.
I was, oh, is
Go
time,
ahead.
is it? Is time
No,
gone?
no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna just mention that in terms of the AI and how it's used, it's also good to just have constraints as well. So if you're going to give a prompt, you should say like, I'm doing a 7-minute speech. It's for this kind of audience. And then you need to say, you know, I want you to talk about A, B, C, and D. And then what you would then say is you would put in constraints saying, don't do this, don't do that. Because really it's the quality of the prompts that brings out the quality of the output. And if you just do a generic thing like write me a speech, you're going to get quite a generic bland thing. So just utilize that as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Chris, for that insight there. That was really good. Debbie, did you just put your hand up there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I know we're talking about the negatives right now, but I just want to say that it's not all negative. I think if you can try, usually, I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to recall back to when I did my very first speech at Toastmasters. Anyone that would listen, anyone who phoned my house or phoned me on my phone or anything, the first thing I'd say to them was, could you please listen to my speech? And I remember being in a car on the way to the club that evening, and my friend dropped me, and she had listened to my speech 3 times on the way there. And to have a tool like Udly, so you're not annoying your friends, your partners, or anyone else, to actually have an AI tool that will listen to you, that's not going to say to you, oh, come on, do I have to listen to it again? I think from that point of view, it's really useful. And so, whereas, yeah, there are some negatives, but I think if you focus on the positive things that can help you, then those outcomes can actually be really beneficial to you.
Thank you for that, Debbie. And thank you to everyone who's asking questions. I don't know if we're going to be able to get through all of them tonight, so we can obviously reach out with any, if you have any questions that we're unable to answer, hopefully we'll be able to share those separately for you. But I do know that we have a question from Sadia. So Sadia, do you still have a question? Is your hand still raised? I'm sorry, I can't see the audience here, so
did I put my questions? No, that's fine. I think Rizwan's question, or I think the response to Rizwan's question did answer my question in a way, but then I wanted to also compare. So as before AI became common, whenever we wrote a speech or whenever we wrote an educational material, we do references to we do sometimes if it's a dissertation, you have a very long reference of people's materials you've used. So I think we can't obviously reference ChatGTP because ChatGTP would have collated the best of, or hopefully amalgamated information to provide a response to you. But it makes sense to have some form of reference or some form of link to say that you have used it. But then in a 5-minute speech, you don't necessarily start listing all the materials, all the sources you've used, unless the speech requires it. You don't necessarily do that. So I think it's a balance. It's a balancing thing. It's common. We're all using it now. We're using it to refine our paragraphs. We're using it to summarize our notes. Rather than sit down for 2 hours and read a whole book, a whole chapter, and then summarize it, you can ask the tool to summarize it for you and then pick out the salient points. So that's how I use it. But yeah, no particular question anymore.
Well, thank you so much, Sadia. I'm glad your question was answered earlier on, and thank you also for your insights that you've shared there with us. Now, I know I'm really impressed with how the chat, everyone is engaging in the chat. Apologies if I've missed any of your questions, but we are coming to the end of the time that we have for this panel discussion. And I think the key thing that we've heard repeated a lot here is about balance and making sure that we are using these tools in a balanced way, thinking about sort of the things like Arnaud said about when you're writing your speeches, making sure they're original and actually using prompts to help you get that content out there. But I guess what I'd like to ask our panelists to let us know, what would be your one takeaway or key tip that you might like to share with the audience today, either from your experiences or something that's been discussed today? What would be the one takeaway that you'd like the audience to leave with today? I'll start with Debbie.
I would say it's nice to know what's out there, but it doesn't mean you have to use it. I would also say that if there are some things that's going to make your life easier, then give it a go. I mean, Grammarly is one thing that I would say has been a game changer for me. And I would, but if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. If it is, then it is. But also just, it's not there to replace your thought of idea or original thinking. It's there to enhance your journey and just to use it wisely.
Thank you, Debbie. Enhance your journey and use it wisely. Arnaud, yourself, what would be the takeaway that you'd like to share with the audience today?
Don't let the dog wag, sorry, don't let the tail wag the dog. So use the tools, learn how to use them for your own benefit, but don't let the tool run over whatever you are trying to achieve.
Thank you so much, Arnaud. I'm not going to repeat what you said because I'm going to get those two words mixed up as well, but thank you so much for that. And to you, Wendy, what would you say would be the takeaway that you'd like to leave with our audience today?
What I would like to say is, we all have our own unique patina when we speak. We all have our own unique word choice and style of speaking. And although AI is a really good tool, do you really want to replace your own unique language by an aggregation of everybody else's?
Thank you so much. Being unique, keeping that balance, using these tools to finesse what we do, not to replace what we do. That's what I've gotten from tonight's discussion. And I'd just like to say thank you so much to our three panelists, Arnaud, Debbie, and Wendy, for being here tonight and sharing their insights, answering the questions that everyone has had. I also want to say thank you to everyone who's commented in the chat. Sorry if we've missed any questions that were there. But we are now out of time, and I'm going to hand back to Jatinder to close off the session. So thank you, everyone. Back to you, Jatinder.
Well done, Lydia. What an interesting discussion, I would say. And I was completely intrigued. And I'm sure I'm going to make good use of the apps that are available, especially Udly. I will have a look into it. I haven't done that yet. And I'm sure most of our club officers who have been a participant here tonight will take these insights to their clubs and share them with their club members. And I will definitely use this for the enhancement of my skills and my speech writing skills. So thank you so much, Lydia, and our wonderful panelists.